Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Tuesday. It's kind of hard to keep remembering that, a post-Labor Day holiday. Dustin Schutte joining me as always here on this Tuesday. Don Fischer joins us next. Looking forward to talking to the King. I'd love to have heard his call of that game, especially that last drive. Unfortunately, I never get to hear any of that because we're in the press box. And I keep saying they should pump his call into the press box, both basketball and football. I wish I had that availability. It would be cool to be able to plug into an auxiliary plug and pick up the broadcast. But we don't get that. Only you guys get to hear the great one, Don. So looking forward to talking to him, though, as he is about to join us. But wow, what a great game we'll get to talk about, and a finish, and now a setup to their season, because we talked so much about the importance of this game, and Tom Allen acknowledged as much in the press conference right before the game and right afterwards. He said he knew how important it was. That, they always say it's every game's important, and in the next game, he said, yeah, but he knew. He knew how important this game was and what was lying on it, and they got it done. That's the most important thing. I don't care what it looked like in the middle, because they were able to sustain and hold and do the things that they had to do to beat a Big Ten team that had a game under their belt. So, to me, that is a big deal.
Well, not only that, they got back to the Tom Allen style of defense, and we talked about. I was still concerned, but him taking back over, having a big part of that defense. They got 4 turnovers against Illinois. That was absolutely huge. That was something that they thrived on in 2020. Went away last season, and now it's way too early to tell if that's going to be the identity of this team, but it looks like that they're attacking the football now a lot more. So that's a positive sign. And then, this is looking way in advance, but you get to this 1-0 start. Now you think we beat Idaho, we beat Western Kentucky. We're 3-0 heading into that Cincinnati game. And by the way, Cincinnati lost to Arkansas on the road. I still think Cincinnati's going to be a really tough opponent for the Hoosiers.
They are.
I think they looked pretty good. They're not as good as they were last year, though, I don't think.
They're still a second-half team, I can tell you that.
I think, yes, they are. So I think Indiana does have a shot. But the bottom line is you look at those first 5 games, because after Cincinnati, then you play Nebraska. You're looking at that as
Nebraska struggled.
4-1. Yes, they did. They almost their defense struggled. Their defense is not good. Their offense, it looked like Scott Frost maybe took over the play calling there in the second half, and it looked a little bit better. But their defense is not good. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's a Big Ten team that Indiana is going to be able to run on. It will be Nebraska. So, you look at this schedule, 4-1, and then, like I said, you've got some winnable games all of a sudden after you got that Illinois victory.
Don't give them the loss yet. It's not impossible, which that's the thing. And looking forward to getting Don's take on this when he joins us. But I'm
saying your goal should be 4-1.
Your goal should be 5-0.
Well, okay. The team should be undefeated, right? But I think if you're a fan and you're 4-1, I think you're feeling pretty good.
That's all I'm saying. If you're 4-1 at that point, you should be doing cartwheels.
Yeah, exactly.
No, because you will have gone to Nebraska and gone to Cincinnati, and played an opening Big Ten opponent. So no. If you're 4-1, you're doing cartwheels.
Yes,
because you're more than likely headed to a bowl, which at the beginning, outset of the season, seemed like, I don't want to say impossible, but very difficult. Very, very difficult chore. But looking forward to talking to Don as soon as he joined. There he is. Don Fischer joins us now. Don, how are you, brother?
Good, guys. How are you?
Well, it's always a lot happier to start the week when you're coming off of a win to talk about. And we definitely have, not only we do have a win to talk about, but a hell of a finish and of important start because, we were talking about, well, I watched Cincinnati over the weekend. We watched Nebraska, and don't put, of course, the horse before the carts, but the team got the start that they needed to get, most importantly. So I don't have to worry about the second game. They got the first game under their belts, which was gigantic.
No question about it. Tom Allen and I talked Wednesday night during the talk show in a commercial break, and I said, Coach, this is a pretty important football game, isn't it? And he said, oh, yeah. He said, I'm not telling the team how important it is. He said, but everybody knows how important this game is. It's huge. It's huge for the mindset of not only the players and the coaches, it's phenomenally huge for the fan base as well. And without question, that victory on Saturday was an emotional win for this football program, but it was a win of relief for a lot of people, to say the least. They had to come up with a victory somehow, some way. And man, for about 58 minutes of that football game, it didn't look like it was going to be that way because the struggles, especially with the offensive line that took place, not being able to run the football. But you saw signs of really positive things. The turnovers are back from what we saw 2 years ago. Last year was just an abomination, and how different the defense looked compared to what it was 2 seasons and 3 seasons ago. And we saw the return of the defensive play, even though they had 23 missed tackles, which tells you they certainly didn't play their best football. But
that's something you're going to expect in the first game.
Well, you do, especially since
you don't want it. You don't want it, but you're going to expect it.
Well, yeah, but you only expect it because they don't hit. Yeah. The fall practices, there's just not that much hitting anymore. It's supposed to be that way for every team. I don't believe that every team does it that way because the NCAA has put in rules about you can't only hit so many times, so many practices where they take guys to the ground, that kind of thing. And now we see some teams that go out there and play very well and hit like crazy in the first game of the season. Well, don't tell me that they practice the same way Indiana does. And Indiana does it for another reason. They don't hit a lot because they can't afford the depth problems that injuries cause. So Indiana has to play it safer and does play it safer. And I think a big part of game one is just getting used to being hit and hitting again. And so that's one of the reasons we saw so many missed tackles. I think that will improve greatly this week.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And it's always, we talk about the improvement between weeks 1 and week 2. Illinois looked a little sharper coming out, but Indiana still managed to do everything they needed to do. And that was the difference between having that week and getting that game under their belt. Now they know exactly, all right, we've got to work on this. We've got to work on this. Offensive line, they're going to lose Matt Bedford, of course, but and there was some talk about the offensive line, but at the end of the day, they gave up 1 sack, and at the post-game presser, Connor Bazelak took responsibility for that, said, you know what, I should have thrown that ball away. That was my responsibility. But man, oh man, how about Connor Bazelak? The dude is a cool customer. After the game in the post-game presser, I've never seen him in any way other than just like this. He is just flatline, and that's got to be gigantic for them when he's stepping in the huddle.
Well, I think, and I watched him in a couple of scrimmages. I know you guys didn't get a chance to do that, but I had a chance to watch him in the 2 scrimmages leading up, 2 of the 3 scrimmages they had leading up to the start of the season. And that's the thing that struck me at that point in time was this guy is very cool and calm, doesn't seem to get rattled. And look, he went through the wars of the SEC for a couple of years and playing some of the best college football teams in the country. And as a freshman, he was the SEC Player of the Year, as a freshman Player of the Year. So the guy has definitely got the tools to be what Indiana's looking for. And he certainly proved it in this first ball game. That last drive was spectacular. Now, I'm going to tell you something that'll probably tick off people that wanted to go crazy about how Indiana performed in that last drive and what a tremendous drive it was. I still don't understand what Illinois was doing. I cannot understand how you get into a prevent defense when you have pretty much put pressure on the quarterback all game long, and they go into a shell type defense at the end. DJ Matthews wasn't even covered on 2 or 3 of those passes, and when he was covered, it was like 5 yards. He had all the room in the world to catch the football, and Bazelak had all the room in the world to throw it. I was stunned by that, but it allowed Indiana to go down the field. That penalty with a shoving penalty on Camp Camper was probably one of the stupider plays in the game from Illinois' perspective. So Indiana had all the things go their way on that drive, but at the same time, you've got to execute the plays to do it. You give this Indiana football team credit because they found a way to get it done, and then they run it into the end zone, the weakest part of the game that they showed offensively, and they run it into the end zone with Cotter going 4 yards and Shivers 1 for the touchdown. So there were so many positives out of that ball game, but there also were a lot of negatives too, and the offensive line play has just got to get better.
Don, I think we talk a lot about that final drive because it was the game-winning drive. Connor Bazelak gets a ton of credit, but a kid I was really impressed with throughout the game was Cam Jones. Ended the night with 12 tackles, had a big sack, fumble recovery. I mean, that kid was all over the field, and we saw him at Big Ten Media Days. That's a player who Tom Allen is leaning on as a team captain, as somebody who's supposed to be a leader on the field. And man, I don't know if he's gotten Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive Player of the Week honors, or if they've even named him, but he was probably the most underrated player from that game. Obviously, the circumstances presented that, but what an effort from him at the linebacker position.
Well, as you know, he went out in the first quarter. He took a hit in the first quarter, and he ran to the locker room. It looked like it was an ankle injury. I don't know if it was. It was a lower leg injury. They don't tell us anymore what the injury actually is, but he ran to the locker room to get treatment, went in there, got treatment, came back out, and played the rest of the ball game and put the statistics on the floor, on the field that you expected to see him put out there. And hold on 1 second, guys, because I've got a phone call coming in here.
Mr. Popularity, baby. He is Mr. Popularity.
Okay. Well, now I just ended the phone call. At any rate, Cam Jones, and we had him on our pregame. He was our guest on the Hoosier Profile in our pregame on Saturday. He's just a great young man.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that led the group of players that went in to see Tom Allen at the end of last year and said, Coach, we can't let our careers end this way here at Indiana. We can't allow our program to look like it's going back downhill again. We want to turn this thing around. And so give this guy credit, all the credit in the world. You're right, Dustin. He deserves it because he led that group. He led summer practice sessions. He is a tremendous leader, a great person, number one, but a great leader as well for this football team. And, Tom Allen is relying on him dramatically. Had they lost him in that first ball game, he'd be pretty upset.
Sean Shivers, man, did he take a hit to start that game? Illinois, for not having it, we talked about they had no tape on Indiana, no nothing. They looked like that Indiana gave them their first 2 plays they were going to run because they were on them like unbelievable. And Sean Shivers got hit so hard, I think it took half the game for him to recover from that. And I'm not kidding. He got hit.
Yeah, he got blasted. There's no question about that. And for him to come back and play like he did at the end, you got to give him credit too. But there were no holes to run in this ball game. It's simply this offensive line couldn't produce any kind of a run attack. And it's just unfortunate because the rest of the team didn't look that bad. There's no question defense was the key. The offense with Bazelak throwing the football, the wide receivers and tight ends, they all did their job. But the run game did not take place in this contest. I don't know how they turn that around, especially after you've lost the most experienced offensive lineman on your football team in Matthew Bedford. This coaching staff has some work to do. There's no doubt about it. I don't know what the answer is, because we haven't seen the improvement in the offensive line now for a couple of years. And it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's a reality. And how do you win football games if you can't run the football? You're not going to win many, that's for sure.
I think
they certainly get a go ahead, Dustin.
I was going to say, I think coming into the season, one of the things that I mentioned was Walt Bell taking over as the offensive coordinator, I think was a major benefit, not simply for the fact of his name, but the fact that he found ways at Maryland. If you remember some of those teams he coached in College Park, those offensive lines were not good, but he found a way to get the ball into the hands of some of those playmakers that Maryland had, and they had some really good athletes. So I feel like the offensive line needs to show some sort of improvement if this team is going to get to bowl eligibility. I agree with you, Don, but I also think there is something to be said for the fact that he's had to find creative ways to win football games without an offensive line in the past, and he was able to do it. It wasn't the prettiest, but they were able to do it down the stretch in that game. So I think maybe there's a little bit of that balance there, but ultimately, if you're running for 32 yards on 26 carries, you've got some serious problems.
Yeah, no question about that. I do think Walt is a really good offensive coordinator. I think he will try his best to get this thing turned around. And I don't know what the answer is. I'm not a coach. I'm not a guy that. I mean, literally, I'm not an X and O guy. I simply go out and I call what I see. But at the same time, you have to be concerned about what we saw from that offensive line. And can they turn it around? I'm sure there's a possibility they can get that done. And it may be play calling, it may be trick plays, I don't know. But you've got to find a way to run the football and be effective running the football, especially at the end of ball games when you might have a one touchdown lead. If you can't stop the other team, you're in trouble. And if you can't keep the football in your hands on the offensive side, you're just giving the other team opportunities. So it's going to be a critical thing for this football team to find improvement in the offensive line. And we'll see if that pays dividends down the road, because if they can't, I think it becomes a long season again.
Yeah, and we'll get to talk about it again on Wednesday as you are at Southern Stone with Coach Tom Allen, correct?
Yes, sir. Tom will be our second show of the year. Had a good crowd for week one, and we hope we'll have another big crowd this coming week. I can't imagine that we won't see a lot of the gray hairs that we normally see in the show. They'll be there because they'll all be excited about the upset win.
Yeah, and speaking of fans, shout out to the students, the half that stayed. There was a good chunk, about half of those students that stayed for the other fans that would be the east side that you and I both look at. About half of them, I was on the field at the very end of the game, and that was a needed thing. There was at least half or maybe a little less of the students and the other crowd that stayed for the end of that game. And that was needed for Indiana. It helped them, I think, tremendously having them there, because normally they wouldn't be there.
Well, you're right. People say, well, I heard Scott Dolson say, I think our fans take some criticism sometimes. It's undeserved. No, they don't. In my opinion, our fan base is not very good. We have about 20,000 fans that will stay throughout, thick and thin, whatever the case may be, and some of those even leave at the end of ball games at times. But at the same time, beyond that 20,000, I'm not going there and saying we got great fans, because we have fans that are interested. As long as we're doing what they want us to do, or as long as they're doing what the team is doing, if it's succeeding, if it's looking like it's not too bad, that kind of thing. But we've seen this in Indiana. I bet this is my 50th year, and I've watched it my career. I mean, if things are going well, the fans usually, a lot of them will stay. The students almost always, back for the last 40 years or so, have always left at halftime, whether they're winning or losing. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. This is the only fan base I've ever seen like this, to be honest with you. So
it's odd.
We do have a good base of fans, the 20,000 that are sticking through thick and thin, but the rest of them are all fair weather for the most part. or we got other things to do later in the day.
Yeah, well, hopefully they show up this next week. Don, I can't wait. I'll see you on Wednesday, and you have a great rest of your week, man. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks a lot, Jim. See you guys.
The great Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant, where you can find Don and Coach Allen every Wednesday for the Football Coaches Show.